What's going on? It is Shannon Williams, the OCPD coach, and today we're going to be talking about the Julio Fulio murder trial. Now, this is only going to be the first trial. There are going to be a series of trials that take place over at least the next year with multiple different defendants. But this case that we're talking about specifically is for one Alicia Andrews. Before we hop into it, though, I am somebody who has OCPD, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, and also have ADHD. So I'm not a lawyer. I don't have a law background. I'm a senior software engineer who loves problem solving, and I have an extreme level of detail. Like my attention to detail sometimes can be scary. So I'm going to try to give you all my perspective of the case. Imagine I'm a juror, somebody who has no knowledge of the law, but I'm in there with enough knowledge to make a decision and then also give some positive feedback on things that we can do going forward just to help any individual that's in the situation of the defense team because I'll tell you they had a hell of a case that they had to defend against. Now let's hop right into it. Alicia Andrews, I believe this young lady is 22 years old now, but I know that her involvement in this case was supposedly minimal. She is the boyfriend of another individual who has more of a more stake in this whole thing. So she was along for the ride, and the ride was from Jacksonville to Tampa, where they supposedly her crew and everybody. I'm saying supposedly because I'm not a lawyer, I can't convict anybody, but they are on trial for murdering Charles Jones, aka Julio Fulio. And Julio Fulio was a really popular rapper in Florida. He also had ties to gangs, and it is believed that this was gang related. So this is a case that you see a whole lot of people being brought in, being associated with this case, and it's something that having a child and being a man, you hate to see stuff like this happening. I mean, this is youth killing youth. I mean, we're talking about young folks here, and it sucks. You know, it's sad to see, but it's something we're gonna talk about, and I'm gonna try not to ramble too much, but hopefully you guys learn something and have a good time, right? So, overview of the case. We are going to start with the charges that are being passed to Mrs. Alicia Andrews, the charges that she was being charged with on this case, which was first degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. So again, this first degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Her her defense team had a hill to climb. I mean, when you look at the fact that she was inside of the vehicle, one of the vehicles that followed Mr. Jones from one location to the next and was responsible for transporting the weapons and eventually using the weapons to kill Mr. Charles Jones. You are she's heavily implicated just being there, right? So that's something that was already an uphill battle. Being in the car the whole time, her phone was being used. There were different things that made it where it was going to be hard to act like you had no idea what was going on. That is what the defense team wanted to prove that Miss Alicia Andrews had absolutely no idea what was going on. She was supposedly just there with her boyfriend going on a trip to reconcile because they had been having some differences and a murder happened. But she wasn't involved. She didn't know anything about it. And she's completely innocent. One of the things that because I don't typically watch these cases, I'm not really into this stuff, or I wasn't. Now I'm kind of into it. But my wife was the one who brought this to my attention, and it seemed like such a home run case just hearing it. You have an individual who's in a car, a murder happens, and it was her boyfriend who was heavily involved. Her phone was used. Okay, guilty, right? That's just naturally that's what came to mind. While watching this case, I actually started to see this from a different perspective. And this is when I talk about the trying to be non-biased. That this case opened my eyes to that big time because I came into this with a bias and want to flip it on the other side. So getting right into opening, because that is one of the things that I think it set the tone for the trial opening, as it should. But opening statements, we we start to hear that there are different. Actually, let me take a step back, because there was something that happened before opening that's relevant to this. There was an attempt to bring in abuse allegations into the case, into the trial, and the judge denied it. The judge denied it, and on the premise that abuse could not be used as a defense, essentially. And there was a whole misunderstanding on what was going on with that was cleared up a little bit later on. But there was a lot of bias, you'll probably say, in this case with the judge. If you watch the case, you'll start to see different things. But that was something that I think they kind of threw the defense team off a little bit, because they weren't trying to use the self defense, the abuse, to say that she was being abused and that's why she was implicated. They were trying to use the abuse to say that she was being abused, hence her lack of knowledge and fear of trying to gain knowledge. And had I known that, I think I would have even looked at that differently, because I had no idea that that's what they were going for. It was painted in a different light. But now let's jump to opening statements. And from the second the prosecution opens up, you're gonna start to see some contradictions and lies, just straight lies on their part. One of the first lies that the prosecution makes is regarding Alicia Andrews' tattoos. Alicia Andrews has, I'm actually gonna pull it up because I can do that on here. Hold on one sec. So Alicia Andrews tattoo. Pull this up. All right. So she has a few tattoos, but the tattoos that are in question are these tattoos. So there's a tattoo right here on her chest and a tattoo on her neck. Both of these tattoos spell out gutter. Again, they spell out gutter. And you might be saying, okay, who is gutter? Why do we care? Well, gutter, if I get the right camera, gutter is her boyfriend's name. And the way the prosecution tried to paint it was that she acted like she didn't know who Gutter was at all. That she was just oblivious to the word, to the name Gutter, and that they called her in a gotcha when they pointed out her tattoos. That's what the prosecution stated, that she played it as if she had no idea who Gutter was. Well, this is, to me, deceptive, because as you start to listen later on in the trial and you watch the footage from when she was being interrogated, she never states that she doesn't know who Gutter is, right? She states that she doesn't understand why they are calling him that, because she doesn't call him that. She calls him, I think it was Zay. So that right there, prosecution immediately lost my trust, because they came into this line about small stuff to try to assassinate character. And in a situation like this was going to be, to me, a character case. If I'm a juror, it's going to be if I believe you or not. Now this is this is the other side of the coin. So prosecution lied, but then the defense in the opening statements did not do anything to make me trust them any more than the prosecution. It's not that they lied, but it seemed as if the story was not 100% sewn. It was not sewn together. It didn't make sense. It wasn't logical. It was something where, had they had, honestly, I'll talk about this a little later, but I would have changed up the whole team, the whole flow of how the team ran. I would have changed that up. And I think somebody else would have done a better job at the opening statement than the person who went. Because there was even a point where the judge asked, is this really something? I mean, I could bring it in, but I don't know if this helps you or hurts you. There were points where I was listening and I actually got upset that certain statements were made. And maybe I'll go, if this is something you guys like, maybe I'll go and start rewatching the videos with my reactions and trying to recount how each thing made me think or look at the case. But It was not. It wasn't great. So that we're at a stalemate, and I told my wife at this point it's a race to the bottom. Either the defense is going to finally have a home run that clears up any type of connection and really makes her look innocent, or the prosecution is going to give a home run that makes it where she's actually guilty. And it didn't seem like either team did that, which is why I think the case kind of fell flat at the end with the conspiracy charge. I think that's what had something to do with it. I think people were just tired of it and ready to go, and they made that decision. So let's keep moving forward and talk about the case a little bit. Alicia Andrews' whole defense was that she had no idea what was going on. She was just in the car riding with her boyfriend, and they have her on camera going to an Airbnb where the other individuals in the that are involved in the overall case were. She claimed not to know anybody in the car that traveled with them except for her boyfriend. And she did mention that she had met one of the individuals before for his birthday. They went to his house and they knew each other. That story was actually doubled down on by that suspect's mom. So that was something that was helpful, or grandmother. So that was actually helpful for her. Another thing was that her phone was used. So her phone was actually used in the trial. So there were pictures on her phone that showed where Julio Fulio was when he actually got murdered, the murder spot. And she claimed that it was her boyfriend using the phone. It wasn't her. There were messages with the other supposed killer. And it was really going to be hard. It was going to be an uphill battle to try to prove her innocence. Some things that I think really helped her out were the fact that they had her boyfriend using her phone on camera. So that was something that validated what she said. There was no evidence, no actual evidence of her making any decision or making any plot or recommendation for him to be killed that night. The closest thing, and this was the bombshell that the prosecution thought they had, was a text message from 2021 between her and a friend in which Miss Andrews stated, "He need to die." And that's, I mean, that it's a whole paragraph, but that was the point that they really wanted to bring up, was the fact that she said he need to die with laughing emojis. So they used that message from January 21st, 2021, and tried to use that to say that she had intent, because this first degree murder conspiracy, that was the thing they had to prove, was intent. Now this is where, to me, the case fell flat for prosecution, right? They thought they had a lot of gimmies. I think they did. They thought that that text message was going to sew it up for her intent. They thought that having, I wish I had the numbers here, but at least 8 different police officers or people who work in the detective realm, having them on trial to confirm the murder happened. They thought that would really hit to confirm that the murder happened. And I think it was, honestly, I think it was misguided. Even when you go back and look at the footage from when she was being interrogated, it all of it was smoke. It was smoke and mirrors. They were telling her, "We have you dead to rights. You're never going to go and see your family again." And when she finally stopped talking, it's, "Hey, you said enough to get your boyfriend. We didn't have anything, but now we have something because you talked." It was really pitiful. Honestly, it was pitiful, and it was something where I sat and watched that footage. And this is where, if you ever watch pro wrestling, there's something called a heel turn and there's a babyface turn. Well, there's another thing called a double turn. And that's when the heel becomes the good guy and the bad guy becomes, I mean, bad guy becomes the good guy becomes the bad guy. That's kind of what happened, I think, in the trial. The momentum shifted right when they showed the footage from her being interrogated, and then she took the stand. You can feel the switch. And I think that goes to show that they had nothing. They honestly had nothing. Everything they thought they had was a misunderstanding or a red herring. I'm gonna see real quick. Let me see. Hold on one second. I actually want to try to. So let me pull something up real quick.
No.
This is
Did you ask him a
justice
question?
is a process. So thank you for putting this footage up.
At
Let me
what
go
point did you
to
figure out that Isaiah Chance was going to Tampa, Florida?
Um, that's the next day I called him on the 22nd.
All right. This is the day. This is the day of
Yeah, the day
the
we
trip
leave.
down.
Yes.
All right. And how did you learn that he was going to Tampa?
I called him early that day like we always do, and I'm like, what you doing today? He said, I might be going out of town. I said, I wanted to go.
Did he tell you what he was going out of town for?
No.
Why did you want to go out of town with him?
Well, we were supposed to go to Atlanta, and we ended up fighting, so I didn't go.
right there. Okay. So I wanted to show that because that was her whole defense. That's what the entire defense was predicated on was Alicia Andrews had no idea what was going on. She was with her boyfriend, and it was just happen chance that she had sent those messages in 2021. It had nothing to do with anything. It wasn't connected. This was an interesting case. So I wanted to talk really quickly about the overall job of the defense team, how they did from my perspective, right? So let's say I'm a juror. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not coming to try to tell you guys how to do your job, right? But I am going to say how I perceived how you did your job. I think that the defense team was miscast. And the defense team was made up of, let me go back to my full cam. The defense team was made up of the lead, who was Jeremy McClement. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. So we have Jeremy, and Jeremy seems to be a very intelligent individual, well spoken. So I think she was in good hands. And then Arian White, Arian, and there was another name before it, but I don't have it up here. But Arian White was the other attorney on this case, and I'm going to show you them real quick. So if I go to active, so this is Jeremy right here, and this is Arian right here, and these two individuals, I think, make a hell of a team. However, I think that the running back is playing the quarterback's position, and the quarterback is playing the running back's position. And when I say that, I want you guys to really understand why that matters to me. The individual who did the opening statement should not have done the opening statement, in my opinion. I think that that individual should have been Arian. Now that also wasn't Jeremy; it was another individual. But I believe that should have been Arian who made that. Arian has something, and I had this conversation with my wife. It took me back to rhetoric essays as a high schooler, and you have logos, pathos, ethos, credibility, emotion, logic. Well, one thing about Arian is she's really good at getting that pathos. She gets emotion. That's somebody who I think if I'm having a trial and I need somebody to really understand my point of view, right? So understanding my point of view, where I was in my head, how I was feeling, what I was thinking, I want her talking on my behalf because she has a way of speaking where it's more conversational, but it's also very adamant. She's adamant about what she's saying. One thing I wish she would do though, and this is a critique because in public speaking, a lot of what you do is how you convey yourself, right? And I would love if she dropped the ums because a lot of times when she speaks, even in other interviews, she uses as a filler word. Now that's my Toastmasters in me coming out. But that small, if you make that small change, I think she would be. I really do believe she would have been the perfect person to do the opening statement. I think she would have nailed it. On the flip side, we have Mr. Jeremy, and Jeremy, again, I've already given him the accolades of how he presents himself and the intelligence, but he is soft spoken. He's a very soft spoken person. This is not a weakness in every area, though. So what I mean when I say this is there were individuals. Hold on. Actually, I wish I had the footage, but I'll show you. There are a lot of times when he's talking, and you'll see him doing this. He's leaning on his arm. The disposition is really just more quiet, more reserved. And I don't think that's what worked best in that position. I think it was a miscast. And I know all this stuff is complicated. You know how he picked his team and he was the one who got the case and all that. That makes sense. But he should have been the one handling all of the objections with the judge to me. And the reason I said that is because, especially with a biased judge, he didn't let any of it rattle him. So he wasn't easily rattled. And I think having that poise, being in that position, would have been the perfect thing for him to do. While Arian asked the questions, she was the one who actually interviewed the witnesses when they came up on the stand. She was the person who gave those impassioned speeches. There were different things that each of them do as strengths. And I think if you would have flipped it, I honestly do think we would have been looking at a different case. I'm gonna give you an example. Watch this. And this is me just talking. I'm not an expert. Whatever. Watch this. As an Aryan, today I'm here to tell you all about my client and the position that she unfortunately found herself in because she was in love. I'm sure many of you have been in love at one point in your life. Heck, you might be in love right now. And sometimes love is blind. Sometimes love is dumb. And in this case, for my client, love was ignorance. Ignorance to the fact that her boyfriend was in a gang. My client had no knowledge of that. She knew he was a rapper, but had no idea he was in a gang. Ignorance to the fact that my client's boyfriend was somebody who was out to kill somebody. My client wouldn't have rolled in the car if she knew there was going to be a shooting going on. She's a teacher. She's somebody who works and helps people who have different mental illnesses. That would make no sense for her to do that. And another thing that the ignorance showed was that my client had absolutely no idea that that night Charles Jones was going to be murdered. And what's sad is that any of us can find ourselves in that same situation because of love. That alone, right? That was a brief little summary. You know, I know it's longer, but that's what she's capable of doing because I've seen her do stuff like that. And imagine if she would have been able to bring that to the trial and really talk a lot more, I think that the case would have been a little bit different. Now, I know I'm rambling on, but this was something that really stood out to me because I really want them to do well in their careers, not just in this case, but just in their careers in general. As I mentioned, Jeremy is he so if Arian is pathos, if she's the emotion, to me, Jeremy is going to be your logos and your ethos. He's going to have the credibility because he's done a few cases and all of those different things, so he knows what he's doing. But the other thing is the logic. The logic. Why do we need to bring these things in? How is this evidence tied to this case? Why is whatever the witness is saying beneficial to the case or harmful to the case? You know, these are different things that I think, and this happens a lot. You had the right people, but you got them in the wrong spots. So that's me and my perspective as a pseudo juror. I think that would have painted a different picture for me because this is a case that had to go off emotion. Why did it have to go off emotion? There was no evidence of her being involved, no clear evidence. So this was not a case that really needed a lot of logic in that case. We needed to hear the emotional side of it. The logic was there. The credibility was there. It was nothing. The prosecution had absolutely nothing. So yeah, that's what I have there. Now, this is something that I want to talk about with how they presented her in general, because when I talk about emotion, I talk about them needing to lean more into the pathos side of things. How you present your client speaks volumes. How you present your client speaks volumes. Again, shout out to Justice is a Process. This is my first time doing something like this, but next time I'm gonna have a lot of videos lined up or clips to try to make it a little bit easier to walk through. So we'll come back to this dude, but let me go here real quick. Uh, so the Alicia Andrews presentation as a person, as a juror, was not 100% what it should have been. I would say it was 80% there. It was so close, right? Things that worked. Her hairstyle. This hairstyle, to me, was the most innocent looking hairstyle out of all the ones she had, right? It wasn't all trying to be cutesy with the little edges and all that stuff. Because that, to me, when I seen it, I was like, guilty. But when you do it how she did it, natural, curl it up, nice look, don't need a whole lot of makeup. This face, the face look that she had was more natural, more reserved. And that, to me, you want to go with innocence. The other thing, though, was the clothing options. She dressed well, she dressed like they tried to dress her like my wife, but my wife actually, the clothes fit, so it makes a little more sense. But they dressed her in more of a classy, reserved attire. And I'm not sure how that works with where they get the clothes and all that stuff. My wife would know, I don't. But they failed in one major area. Can you guess what it was? The tattoo. Why do we have to look at? She has a big tattoo right here, and I know you can't cover the tattoo up with makeup. Well, you could, but for her, she's not gonna go and cover that tattoo up with makeup. I think she should have been dressed in turtlenecks every day, because the tattoo. When people see people and they see things, they make connections in their brains. It doesn't matter if the corrections are valid or not. Stereotypes exist, and when you see a young lady or anybody with a giant tattoo on their neck, unless it's Cody Rhodes, his tattoo looks stupid too. But if you see a giant neck tattoo, you're going to think hard. Hard. I think that's the best word to come up with. Hard. They should have been painting her as soft. We don't want her to be portrayed as hard if we're trying to say that she had nothing to do with the murder. When she was in the car, her phone was used, she was there, she sent messages about him before. That doesn't make sense. You want her to be portrayed as soft, where people say, it's no way her really, look at her, she's just innocent. That it's a mind game, but it's a mind game that they didn't play. And I kept, every single day I asked my wife, why are they not covering her neck tattoo up? Bare minimum. Like, regardless of the clothes she's wearing, why not cover the neck tattoo? That's a small thing. And I know you probably like, is that really? Why do we care about? I'm telling you, it matters. Perception matters, especially when somebody is fighting for their life. Perception matters. I'm trying to see if they have it on here. And I know they said, look, they had it covered up here a little bit, but it was because of the oversized suit. But you could still see what was going on. This, she should have had her hair down to cover that up. But that's another thing that I know they said the jurors couldn't see her. So it really didn't matter because the jurors couldn't see her, all that stuff. It doesn't really matter to me. Still, just in case somebody does happen to see her, just in case when she went up on the stand, you really do want to make sure you presented her in the best way. So I think that was a fail. Now, a little bit out of here, let's talk about the actual, when she said she gave her boyfriend the phone.
Half and I did the other half. I can't remember.
There's a point in the McDonald's video that we've seen where Davion Murphy is lighting some sort of cigarette or blunt. Do you remember that?
I believe it was the back of the parking lot.
Was that the only space available at the time?
Yes.
And were you driving?
No.
Well, let me ask you this. At any point in time during that night, did you drive the vehicle?
No.
When you get out of the vehicle, what happens?
We start walking, and he stops me and say, "Let me see your phone."
Do you give him the phone?
Yes.
At the time, do you think anything of it?
No, he always has it.
That right there. When I listened to her answer seemed really genuine. You know, I didn't. It didn't seem like it was a lie. It didn't seem like she was faking anything. Even during their interrogation, everything seemed genuine. But when she says, "I gave him the phone. He always has it." I think that I would have tried to harp on that a little more. Right here. Hold on.
Did he ask you for a code to get in?
Yeah.
And did you give him the code?
Yeah, I did.
Do you know what he did with the phone?
He tried to make a call, I guess. He had it up, but I didn't hear what he was saying.
All right, so let me talk to you about this. Is it weird or strange, anything out of the ordinary, for Isaiah a chance to use your phone to make phone calls?
No.
Had you done that before in the past?
Yes.
Have you spoken to Robert Howard using your phone before?
Yes.
Have you spoken to other individuals using your phone before?
Yes.
Do you know why?
No, but I assumed it's maybe because they don't want him to have his number.
Now that was stupid. When she said that to me, that was where I said, if you're pleading ignorance, then it makes sense for you to say, I didn't know why he wanted my number. I assumed he wanted my phone because he didn't want people having his number. I That didn't really make sense to me. I honestly, if I was the prosecution, I would have went deep into this stuff. But the prosecution sucked. Everybody sucked on this case, it seemed, in different areas, right? Now, I was really impressed by her up on the stand because it made sense what she was saying. And she had prosecution stumped quite a few times where they thought they had her and they didn't have her at all. So I think she did well on the stand. And I'm gonna wrap this one up. I know I've been talking for a long time, but my takeaways really, let me actually tell you what happened in the case, right? She did get found guilty of manslaughter. So she was not charged with first degree murder. She was not charged with conspiracy. And they tried to see if she would be able to get charged with second degree murder, but she had no intent. They couldn't find her guilty of any intent. So they got her with manslaughter. The judge throughout this case was very, in some cases, biased. And I didn't understand why. There were certain things that okay, yeah, the defense team, you guys know, it's certain things you guys shouldn't have done, right? Like the who posting that social media post with the song from Young and Ace, that wasn't necessary. It wasn't professional. Doing the interviews, not necessary. I think going forward, if they stay a team, excuse me, I think going forward, if they stay a team, they can figure out their positions. I think they can really do a great job. And I do think that in this case, a lesson was learned about who you hang with, about keeping the right company. And even if she was innocent, even if she had no idea what was going on, you have to be more aware of what's happening. You cannot let love make you ignorant. And she's still talking to the individual too. That's a whole nother can of worms that came out during her examination, her cross examination, I guess you would call it. And she's still talking to him, and he doesn't know they've broken up, but she is trying to keep him sane because she's afraid for her life, essentially. One thing that she could have done a little bit more was show some emotion. There was no real emotion shown outside of happiness in different areas. Like I saw her smile more than anything. And I think if I was being framed essentially for a murder, you would definitely see some anger, frustration, disappointment, sadness. I would be up on that stand like, I didn't know what was going on. I had no idea what was going on. I'm telling y'all, I did not know what was going on. Look, only thing I remember was sitting in the car and going to get some McDonald's. I was in the car. We were having a good old time. Some people popped up. I'm like, whoa, who are y'all? Why are y'all here? Then next thing I know, I'm in the car. We couldn't find where to park. It was too much going on. And I hear a gunshot. Boom, 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 boom. I'm scared to call the police because I'm afraid that I'm gonna be implicated. Whatever it might be, it just seems like she should have more of it. And I don't know what it is. I have no idea what it is. I wish they could do a psych eval and just really get deeper into what was going on in her mind. But the other thing that I wanted to mention too was that the police interrogation. Now this is 2.5 hours. I'm not watching 2.5 hours of this right now because I watched the whole thing already. But this thing was a mess. Let's see if I can find it. This whole interrogation was a mess. Especially this part right here. Hold on. So that situation right there, I think the detective on this case, he lost it altogether. I don't know. She was toying with him. She was toying with him with both of these guys and letting them make a fool out of themselves. So what I think is I would have loved if Arian Attorney White could have gone in during that time and really drilled them on the questions, the bully tactics, and ultimately the lying. I mean, it was just lies. It was a lot of lying on the prosecution. So that's what lost me. Prosecution lost me with the lies, the misinformation. They had no case, and they got something, but the defense. I wish the defense would have done a little bit differently, just in general, because I really do think that they had the right pieces, but they didn't have them in the right places on the board. So I'm gonna wrap that one up. Oh, I didn't even show you all the footage. Sorry, I had the footage. Um, this is what I was looking at right here. So what right here? Detective gets up, sits next to her, and is like, "If I'm talking, if I'm saying all this next to you." But yeah, ultimately, what I think happened. So this is not now what I think happened. Let's say if I give her the benefit of the doubt and say she genuinely, I say she probably had 10% of an idea that something fishy was going on. Maybe she didn't know exactly what. I don't think the prosecution proved her guilty of anything. I don't think she should have been. I don't think she should have been found guilty if they didn't find her guilty of anything. Now, this is when you go deeper into the manslaughter law and all of that stuff. So, if you are a lawyer, if you do want to school me on something, put it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. But for me, I try to call it down the middle on stuff, and I completely flipped on the other side while watching this whole case and hearing her go up there and everything the prosecution thought they had as a home run. It was it was like a fourth ball when you get to Walker base. It was like that, but it was ultimately it was strikeouts. It wasn't anything that really made me think, oh yeah, they're correct. She's guilty. She's guilty. So that being said, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. This is something new. Try to use some of my OCPD and use it to analyze things. So this is the first time I did this, but I'm willing to do this. If you have other cases, so let's say if you have cases you want me to watch or you want me to react to, send them my way. I would love to break it down and see what I can identify. But ultimately, I do think that everybody involved in this case should reflect and say, okay, what can I do better going forward? Everybody, judge, defense, prosecution, everybody has areas that they can improve in. So have a great one. Keep fighting for your life, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.